Good day, this is Mrs. Paul, and welcome to our Unit 2 review. Now, as we go through these review questions, I would strongly suggest that you use the pause button on your player so that you have an opportunity to do the problem first before you hear what my solution is. So here we have question 1. Again, the suggestion is hit pause and then unpause it when you're ready to hear me back. Now, here we have the volume of the cylinder is given by V is equal to pi r squared h, where r is the radius of the cylinder and h is the cylinder's height, which equation could be used to solve for h. Now, this is solving a literal equation. And since they want to solve for h, that means we have to isolate h. We have to get h by itself. So since we have all multiplication here on the right-hand side, we're going to go ahead and divide both sides by pi r squared. So pi r squared cancels on the right-hand side. So now we're left with h is equal to volume divided by pi r squared, which looks like choice B. Now, let's go ahead and look at question number 2. Okay, and again, pause and then unpause when you're ready to hear my solution. Now, which would be D is equal to 5a squared BC solved for B. Okay, in other words, it's similar to the question we just did. Basically, we just want to get B by itself. We want to isolate B. Another literal equation. So we're going to divide both sides by 5a squared C. So notice that the 5a squared and the c cancel, and we're left with b is equal to d divided by 5a squared c, which looks like choice F. Okay, now moving down to question 3. We have here Sarah's working on a project about temperature conversion in her science class, and she's given the formula. Fahrenheit is equal to 9/5 Celsius plus 32 for converting degrees Celsius to degrees Fahrenheit. Now, for her project, she needs to convert temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius, and they want to know which temperature would be equivalent to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Now let's go ahead and look at our choices here. And those are our choices. Alright. So we can just go ahead, set up an equation, solve. What some students have done, and I was very proud of them, they looked at some of the answer choices and they realized that the first 2 answer choices did not make sense. Because, as you know, 32 degrees Fahrenheit is freezing, correct? And 0 degrees Celsius is freezing. So basically, you know that your Fahrenheit has to be a higher number than your Celsius. So therefore, you can eliminate choice A and B because the Fahrenheit has to be greater than the Celsius temperature. But let's go ahead and solve this. Okay, so let's go ahead and subtract 32 on both sides. And we'll be left with 9/5 C is equal to 54. Now we have this fraction that no one likes, but just remember the way that you get rid of a fraction is to multiply by your LCD. So our LCD here is 5, so multiply both sides by 5. Your 5's cancel, so you're left with 9C is equal to 54 times 5 should be 270. And then lastly, divide both sides by 9, and you'll have that your Celsius is 30 degrees. Okay? Now, moving on to question 4. They want to know which property of algebra does the number sentence below illustrate. I want to show you one of my favorite websites, which is regentsprep.org, and they have this really great visual for trying to remember the difference between commutative, associative, distributive, inverse, identity properties. So let's just take a look at this real quick. Again, this is from regentsprep.org. Now here you have commutative properties. So just remember that commutative is basically it's kind of like someone commuting from work. You go from point A to point B in the morning, and in the afternoon you go from point B back to point A. So here you have this visual, you see these cards here, x plus y equals y plus x. So for commutative, you actually have a physical change in location. Now here is the associative property illustration, and this one is really cute. It gives a situation, 3 friends go to the movies, and the red person is in the middle, and she's sitting between the blue person and the yellow person, and then they have a little argument during the movies. So at first she's friends with the blue person, they're associated with each other, then that person really says something really messed up, so she's like, look, forget you. Then she starts and gets real friendly with the green person. So no one actually physically changed position. The only thing that changed was the actual associations they had with each other. I really like this illustration. Okay, so and let's just show distributive real quick. We'll come back to inverse and identity when we need to. And for distributive property, this is one where, hey, I have this number looking in, and then it distributes itself inward. Now let's go back to our problem. Now for this one, it wants to know which of the properties is illustrated here. Now you can go ahead and say, well, we know it cannot be associative property of multiplication because we don't even have multiplication here. So it can't even be choice J. Choice F turns to distributive. We're not distributing anything in it. It's not multiplying inside these parentheses. So the answer is either going to be G or H. Now, how many of you chose choice G? Well, guess what? Choice G is not the correct answer. It kind of looks like associative, but it's not, because notice that what we said for associative is no one actually changes position when you have associative property. They're still sitting in the same order. Here you have an actual change in position. So what actually moved was the 3 plus 6. Initially it was 5 plus 3 plus 6, but now it's the 3 plus 6 is first, then plus the 5. So we actually had a change in location, a physical change. So this one, the actual answer is choice G. And again, this website, regentsprep.org, a great illustration for trying to remember the difference between associative and commutative. Really like that website. Okay. Now, moving on to question 5, and remember question 4, the answer was commutative, choice H. And if you still have a question about that, just come and see me. Now, for number 5, here we have which of the following properties is the justification for step 1. All right, so we have some other answer choices here: commutative, distributive, identity, or inverse. All right, so just make sure you just focus here, step 1. So it looks like this one's distributive property. So the answer to choice 5 would be choice C. All right. Now for number 6, you have the option. You can use your calculator to solve this, but just remember that your SOL and your final exam, the questions may not all be multiple choice. SOL, the questions are not all multiple choice. You have to know how to solve this algebraically, and also you really have to know how to solve it as you move on to geometry. So I'm going to go ahead and just solve this problem algebraically. All right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and distribute that 1/3 in, simply because I can take 1/3 of 12 and I can take 1/3 of 15. In other words, I can evenly do 12 divided by 3 and 15 divided by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and distribute. So 1/3 times 12x is 4x, and 1/3 times 15 is -5, and this is equal to 3x plus 9. Remember what your goal is for solving. You're trying to get the variables on one side and the number on the other side. So we're going to minus 3x on both sides. And you're left with 4x minus 3x is x. Bring down your minus 5 and your plus 9. And now we're going to add 5 to both sides. So we get that x is equal to 14, so your answer for number 6 is choice G. Now moving on to number 7. Now for this one, let's go ahead and just solve it algebraically. So we're going to go ahead and subtract 5 on both sides. And we have negative n over 2 is equal to 12 minus 5, which is 7. And in order to get rid of a fraction, multiply every term by the LCD. And our LCD here is 2. You have the option of just multiplying both sides also by -2, but we could do that in the next step if you like. So my 2's cancel. I'm left with negative n is equal to 14. Now you could say, oh, I have to divide both sides by -1 or multiply both sides by -1, or just simply say, look, if negative n is equal to 14, then that means positive n has to be equal to -14. So our answer for this one was choice B. Now, number 8. Number 8, I went ahead and put this in the calculator already. So let's take a look at what I did. I went ahead and put this into y equals. You can use your store option as well. Let's just bring that back. You can use your store option, but sometimes I prefer to use the y equals because for me personally, it keeps me a little bit more organized. But if you wanted to use store in number 8, you have to go with what you feel most comfortable with. So for this one, what I noticed was they're really only giving you 4 different expressions between choice F, choice G, and choice H and J. There's only 4 different expressions. So what I did was I went ahead and into the calculator, I actually only put 3 of them because I noticed that the only difference between this right-hand side in F and G versus the right-hand side in H and J was the placement of a negative. So I just put just one of them in. So here I have 3/5 x plus 4 over 7, and notice I put in the other equation in as, let's bring that back, sorry. All right, sorry about that. All right, so what I did was I put in a 3/5 x plus 4 over 7 in as a fraction. Now, if in the event you get a calculator there via SOL that does not do these nice fractions, just remember your other option for putting in a fraction is just doing it the old-fashioned way. So this, I just wanted to show the difference between the two. They both will work perfectly fine. So I went ahead and I put these in because there's really only 4 different ones. But again, remember I said that there was only one that had a negative versus one that didn't have a negative. So now what I'm going to do is I want to know what's going to happen when the solution is -40 over 21. So I'm going to go and do table setup. And instead of the table automatically giving me every single value for x, I wanted to ask me, what x do you want to work with? So now when I go to the table, I can go ahead and type in the solution that I want to work with, which is -40 over 21. Now what I'm looking for is, well, which two are actually going to be equal to each other? Well, I can see y1 and y2, they are not equal. Let me arrow over and see what's happening here. The only reason I'm missing y sub 3 is I made a mistake and arrowed down to y sub 4. Now what I notice is that y sub 2 and y sub 4 are not the same, but it looks like y sub 1 and y sub 4 look the same. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go back to y equals, and I'm going to turn off y sub 2 because he is just totally different. So I turn that off by just going over to the equal sign and pushing enter. That way I can focus in on the first two because I think they're the same for this value that we just put in. Well, they're almost the same. The only difference is this has a negative and this one doesn't have a negative. So remember, I did not put in all of the choices. So let's go down here. I'm just going to take out this negative here. Alright, so this is just going to be a 2. Alright. And now let's go to the table. And notice that my y sub 1 and my y sub 4 are absolutely identical. And again, the only reason I didn't type in all 4 was, notice that this set versus this set, the only difference was a negative. So our answer for number 8 is choice. It was y sub 1 and y sub 4 were the same. Now I just have to match them up to the choices I have here. So these are the two that were the same. So that looks like that is choice H. So our answer for this one is choice H because it gave us the same value. And I'll pull that in for you as well. Alright. So for these two equations, when we put in the value they asked us for, which was negative 40 over 21, it gave us the same value for both of those equations. So that's why my answer is choice H. Now for number 9, okay, we have to use the graphing calculator again for this one. Okay, that's fine. Now, which is the equation that has a solution of 4 over 5? Now, looking at these equations, you could use the graphing calculator, but I just might just as easy just start to solve because these are really only 2 steps. So looking at choice A looks really friendly. So 5x minus 3 equals 1. If I add this 3 to both sides, you get 5x is equal to 4. Oh, divide both sides by 5. X is 4 over 5. So guess what? My answer for number 9 is choice A. Okay, I did not use the graphing calculator. You could have. That was an option. And I'm just going to get rid of this right here. All right, now moving on to question 10. Question 10 says, okay, what is the value of x in the following equation? All right. Now, let's go ahead and separate our 2 sides. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 to both sides first. And then we'll be left with 5/3 x is equal to x plus 8. Now, I really need to get rid of this fraction, so I'm going to multiply both sides by the LCD. And the LCD here is 3. Alright, so these 3's cancel. You're left with 5x is equal to 3x plus 24. Now, subtract 3x on both sides. And you're left with 2x is equal to 24. And then divide both sides by 2. And you'll get your final answer of x is equal to 12. And notice that they put the answers using set builder notation. And our answer for number 10 is choice F. And this is simply read as x such that x is equal to 12. And it's just using a little bit of set builder notation. Now let's look at number 11. Now, which shows the solution to the equation below using set builder notation. All right. So let me just get rid of this work here. The one thing you want to be careful of with this problem is make sure that you distribute that negative. And the funny thing about multiple choice, we know the mistakes that you're going to make, and those mistakes will actually be one of the answer choices. So the common mistake for this one is a student not distributing this negative through. So just make sure you do that. So now I'm going to do negative 2 times x, which is negative 2x, negative 2 times positive 3, which is negative 6. Now combine like terms. So negative 2 plus 4 is, negative 6 plus 4 is negative 2. Now add 2 to both sides. And we get negative 2x is equal to 14. And we're going to divide both sides by negative 2. And then we'll get a final answer of negative 7. So that looks like that's going to be choice. Let me just show that last step. So let's go to the next screen. So it's probably going to be choice D. So our answer for that one was choice D. And last but not least, we have question 12. So which equation has a solution of all real numbers? Now, for this one, you just have to remember that if the solution is going to be all real numbers, the left-hand side and the right-hand side are going to be absolutely identical. So that's what I'm looking for my left and my right to be identical. So let's look at choice F. For choice F, if we distribute the 4, we'll have 4 times x, which is 4x, and 4 times negative 3, which is negative 12. So therefore, the answer is not choice F because we do not have 2 identical expressions. Now looking at choice G, distribute the 2 to the x. I'm going to have 2x. And right away I can see I'm not going to have 2 identical sides, so I'm going to eliminate choice G. Now let's look at choice H. If I distribute the 5 to the x, I get 5x. And to distribute the 5 to the negative 6, I get negative 30. And plus 10 equals 5x minus 20. Now let me combine like terms. This is looking promising here. So it looks like choice H is our final answer because we have 2 identical sides, which basically is telling us we're going to have all real numbers as part of our solution set. So that concludes our review of Unit 2, and if you have any questions, just come see me, and have a good day. Bye-bye.